The communication array on the Galactic Council station buzzed with incoming signals from across the galaxy. Most were routine trade requests or diplomatic messages, but one signal made the duty officer's tentacles quiver with alarm. The transmission came from Kepler 442b, a water world on the outer rim. The voice belonged to Thalmora, the elderly leader of the Volani people. Her words trembled with fear and desperation. "This is Thalmora of the Volani colony to any who can hear us. The Krex Empire has invaded our world. Their warships block our skies. Their soldiers march through our cities. We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons, no armies. Our bodies are weak. We cannot fight these monsters." The message continued with details that made the council members sick. The Krex had attacked without warning. They destroyed the Volani's few defensive satellites in minutes. Now Krex troops walked through Volani settlements, taking whatever they wanted. The aquatic Volani could do nothing but hide in their underwater cities and pray. "We beg anyone who hears this message to help us. Send food, medicine, shelter. Send anything you can spare. We are dying. Our children are afraid. Please, someone help us before it is too late." The transmission ended with the sounds of explosions in the background. On Earth, Admiral Hyun-woo sat in his office aboard the starship Indomitable. The 50-year-old man had scars on his face from the Proxima Wars. His gray hair was cut short, in military style. He had been reading reports when his communication officer rushed in. "Sir, we picked up a distress call from the Galactic Council networks," said Commander Bo-Ram. She was younger than the Admiral, but her eyes were just as hard. War had a way of aging people quickly. Hyun-woo listened to the Volani message 3 times. His face grew darker with each replay. He had heard similar pleas before, during Earth's own dark history. The strong taking from the weak, the armed crushing the peaceful. "What do we know about these Volani?" he asked. Bo-Ram pulled up a file on her tablet. "They are an aquatic species. They breathe water and air both. Very peaceful culture. They have never fought a war in their recorded history. Their technology is focused on art, medicine, and ocean farming. No military to speak of." "And the Krex?" "Military empire. They have conquered 12 systems in the past 50 years. They use fear and overwhelming force. Take what they want, enslave who they can, kill the rest." Hyun-woo stood and walked to the window. Earth hung in space below them, blue and white, and beautiful. It looked peaceful from up here. But Hyun-woo knew better. Earth was a world that had created warriors out of necessity. Every continent had known war. Every people had learned to fight or die. "Sir," Bo-Ram said carefully, "the Galactic Council has protocols for this kind of situation. They will send aid ships with food and medical supplies, maybe some peacekeepers to negotiate." Hyun-woo turned around. His dark eyes were cold. "How long will that take?" "The Council moves slowly. Maybe 3 months to organize a response. 6 months to actually arrive. The Volani will be dead or enslaved by then." Bo-Ram nodded. She had reached the same conclusion. Hyun-woo walked back to his desk and opened a secure channel to Earth Command. The face of General Park appeared on the screen. The general was even older than Hyun-woo, with white hair and deep lines around his eyes. "I saw the transmission," General Park said, before Hyun-woo could speak. "The politicians are already arguing about it." "What are they saying?" "Half want to ignore it. Not our problem, they say. We are not even full members of the Galactic Council. Yet. The other half want to send humanitarian aid, food, medicine, that sort of thing. Hyun-woo was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. General, I have been reading about the Krex Empire. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They understand. Only strength. I know. The Volani are asking for aid, but aid will not save them. Only force will stop the Krex. General Park was quiet on the other end. Finally, he spoke. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Let me take a fleet to Kepler 442b. Let me show the Krex what happens when they attack innocent people. The Council will not approve military action. They barely tolerate us as it is. They think we are too violent, too aggressive. Hyun-woo smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Then we do not ask for approval. We respond to a humanitarian crisis. We go to help. General Park understood. The old soldier had fought in wars across 3 star systems. He knew the difference between helping and helping effectively. How big a fleet do you need? Hyun-woo turned to Bo-Ram. She was already pulling up ship rosters and troop deployments. The Krex have 40 ships in that system, she said. Mixed cruisers and destroyers, maybe 10,000 ground troops. Hyun-woo thought about it. In the old days, before humanity reached the stars, this would have been a major military operation. Now it seemed almost routine. Give me 20 ships, he said to General Park. The Indomitable as flagship, Captain Jinsu's assault group, Major Hee Jin's drop troops, Colonel Taeho's rangers. That seems like a lot for a humanitarian mission, General Park said with a straight face. The Krex might resist our efforts to help, Hyun-woo replied, just as seriously. General Park nodded. I will cut the orders, but Admiral, the Council, will not be happy when they find out. The Council can complain after we save the Volani. The transmission ended. Hyun-woo turned to Bo-Ram. Send word to the fleet. We leave in 6 hours. Full combat loadout. Bo-Ram hesitated. Sir, should we inform the Galactic Council of our intentions? Hyun-woo thought about the alien diplomats he had met. Tall, graceful beings who spoke in flowery language about peace and understanding. They meant well, but they had never lived on a world where predators hunted in the night. They had never learned that sometimes violence was the only language bullies understood. Send them a message, he said finally. Tell them Earth is responding to the Volani distress call. We are providing humanitarian assistance. Should I mention the fleet composition? Only if they ask. Bo-Ram smiled. It was the first time she had shown any expression other than professional seriousness. They will be very surprised. The Krex will be more surprised. As news of the mission spread through the ship, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. These were veterans of Earth's expansion into space. They had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. They had put down rebellions on the outer colonies. They had learned their trade in the hardest school possible. In the Galactic Council chambers, the news of Earth's response was met with relief. The humans were still new to galactic society, but they seemed willing to help. Several council members praised Earth's humanitarian spirit. Chancellor Vexatar, the Altarian leader of the council, composed a formal response thanking Earth for their assistance. He looked forward to working with the human aid mission. None of them had bothered to check what kind of aid ships Earth was sending. In the depths of space, Admiral Han-woo's fleet began to move. 20 warships, each packed with weapons and soldiers. They set course for Kepler 442b, where the Volani waited in their underwater cities, praying for salvation. The Krex Empire was about to learn what happened when Deathworlders decided to help. Captain Jinsu stood on the bridge of the Soul's Fury, watching his crew prepare for departure. The assault cruiser was one of Earth's newest warships, built specifically for rapid deployment missions. Its hull was painted dark gray, almost black, making it hard to spot against the void of space. "Sir, we have confirmation from all ships," reported his first officer, Lieutenant Yunji. "Fleet is ready to move on your command." Jinsu nodded. He was a thin man with quick eyes and steady hands. He had earned his command during the Titan Rebellion, where he had led boarding actions against pirate vessels. The scars on his left arm were reminders of that campaign. "Admiral Hyunwoo wants us ready for anything," he told his crew. "Load kinetic rounds in all railguns. Prep the plasma cannons. I want full torpedo loadouts." The weapons officer looked up from her console. "Sir, are we expecting heavy resistance?" Jinsu smiled grimly. "The Kreks have 40 ships. They have been bullying peaceful species for decades. They might not expect anyone to fight back." In the ship's launch bay, Major Haye-jin was inspecting her drop troops. The 8th Orbital Drop Division was Earth's elite rapid assault force. They specialized in attacking from space, dropping directly onto enemy positions in armored pods. Haye-jin was shorter than most of her soldiers, but none of them questioned her authority. She had been the first woman to complete the Drop Corps training program. More importantly, she had led successful missions on 6 different worlds. "Listen up," she called to her assembled troops. "The Vallani are aquatic. That means most of their cities are underwater. The Kreks are land-based, so they are probably occupying the surface installations and coastal areas." Sergeant Dong-hyun raised his hand. "Ma'am, what about underwater operations?" Hee-jin grinned. "Pack your diving gear, Sergeant. We might be getting wet." The soldiers laughed. They had trained for operations in every environment Earth could simulate. Underwater combat was just another day at the office. In another part of the ship, Colonel Tae-ho was briefing his Rangers. The Deathworld Rangers were Earth's special forces, trained to operate in the harshest conditions imaginable. They could survive for weeks without resupply, fight in any climate, and adapt to alien environments quickly. Tae-ho was a big man with thick arms and a calm voice. He had gray streaks in his black hair, earned during 20 years of military service. His men trusted him completely. "The Kreks are typical bullies," he explained. "They use overwhelming force against weak opponents, but they have never faced humans before. They do not know what we are capable of." Corporal Min-ho, the youngest ranger in the unit, looked nervous. "Sir, what if they are stronger than we think?" Tae-ho considered the question seriously. "Then we adapt. That is what Rangers do. We study the enemy, find their weaknesses, and exploit them. Remember, we come from a world that tried to kill us every day. These Kreks have been living easy, conquering defenseless planets. They are not prepared for a real fight." Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council Station, confusion was spreading through the bureaucracy. The initial reports from Earth had been simple enough. The humans were sending humanitarian aid to the Vallani colony. Standard procedure for this kind of crisis. But the sensor readings were strange. The human aid convoy looked suspiciously like a military fleet. 20 ships, all armed, with heavy weapons, energy signatures that suggested combat readiness. Chancellor Vexitar called an emergency meeting. The tall, blue-skinned Altarian was genuinely puzzled. In his 300 years of diplomatic service, he had never seen anything like this. Perhaps the humans are confused about the nature of humanitarian missions, suggested Counselor Thexa, a crystalline being who represented the silicon-based species. They are still new to galactic civilization. Or perhaps, said Counselor Morvek, whose tentacles writhed with worry, they misunderstood the request. Maybe they think the Villani asked for military protection. Vexitar decided to contact Earth directly. He opened a communication channel to the human embassy on the council station. Ambassador Lee answered the call, looking tired but professional. Ambassador Lee, Vexitar said politely, we have received reports that Earth is sending a military fleet to assist the Villani. Surely this is an error in our sensor readings. Ambassador Lee checked his notes. He was a diplomat, not a soldier, but he had been briefed on the mission parameters. Chancellor, Earth is indeed responding to the Villani crisis. We are providing humanitarian assistance as requested. But our sensors indicate heavy weapons, combat troops, military vessels. Ambassador Lee nodded. Yes, that is correct. We want to make sure our aid workers are properly protected. Vexitar was confused. Protected from what? The situation calls for medical supplies, food, temporary shelter. Why would aid workers need military protection? The Krex Empire is known for attacking humanitarian missions, Lee explained calmly. We want to ensure our people can help the Villani safely. This was technically true. The Krex did have a history of firing on neutral vessels. Of course, no human aid workers were actually being deployed, but the ambassador did not mention that detail. After the communication ended, Vexitar remained troubled. He had dealt with dozens of species over the centuries. All of them approached humanitarian crises the same way. Send supplies, negotiate with the aggressors, find a peaceful solution. The human approach seemed unnecessarily aggressive, but he decided to wait and see. Perhaps the humans knew something the Council did not. Back on the Soul's Fury, Admiral Hyunwoo was reviewing intelligence reports about the Krex military. The enemy ships were well armed, but used standard Galactic Council designs. Their tactics were straightforward: surround the target, demand surrender, and attack if refused. They rely on intimidation, he explained to his senior officers. Most species surrender when they see a superior force. The Krex have never had to fight a real war. Captain Jin Su studied the ship specifications. Their shields are strong, but they use plasma-based weapons, short-range, limited accuracy. What about their ground forces? Asked Major Hyajin. Commander Boram pulled up the relevant files. Krex infantry use powered armor and energy weapons. They are physically strong, about twice human size. But their tactics are basic. They rely on fear and superior numbers. Colonel Teho nodded. Bullies always do. They have never faced an enemy that fights back effectively. Admiral Hyunwoo closed the files. Gentlemen, ladies, we have our mission. The Villani asked for help. We are going to help them. The fact that our help comes in the form of military force is not their problem. The officers smiled. They understood the Admiral's logic perfectly. Sometimes the best humanitarian aid was the complete destruction of the people causing the humanitarian crisis. Time to hyperspace jump? Asked Captain Jin Su. 18 hours, replied Boram. We will arrive in the Kepler 442 system approximately 6 hours before any Council aid mission could possibly launch. Good. The Krex will not be expecting company. As the human fleet moved through space toward their destination, the crew went about their preparations with calm efficiency. Weapons were tested and calibrated. Armor was checked and rechecked. Plans were reviewed and memorized. These were not the first humans to answer a call for help with overwhelming violence. Throughout Earth's history, the best way to stop a bully had always been to hit them harder than they could hit back. The Villani had asked for aid. They were about to receive the most effective aid possible, the complete annihilation of their enemies. The Krex Empire had no idea what was coming for them. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Hyun Woo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display update with new contacts. 43 Krex vessels in orbit around the planet, reported Commander Bo-Ram. Mixed cruisers and destroyers. Standard formation. Captain Jin Su's voice came over the communication system from the Soul's Fury. Admiral, they have not noticed us yet. We are still at maximum sensor range. Hyun Woo studied the enemy formation. The Krex ships were arranged in a loose blockade around the water world. Several of them were bombarding the surface with plasma cannons. Bright flashes of light marked where Villani settlements were being destroyed. Status of Villani cities? He asked. Lieutenant Wu Jin, the intelligence officer, checked his readings. Most surface installations are damaged or destroyed, but the underwater cities appear intact. The Krex weapons cannot penetrate deep enough to reach them. That gives us time, Hyun Woo said. Bo-Ram, signal the fleet. Attack formation. Jinsu gets the first strike. The human ships moved forward in perfect coordination. They had practiced. This maneuver dozens of times. Each captain knew exactly where to be and when to be there. On the Krex flagship, General Haxron was reviewing bombardment reports when his sensor officer suddenly screamed in alarm. General, unknown ships approaching from system edge. 20 contacts. Haxron turned from his display. The large reptilian creature moved slowly as befitted his species. The Krex had evolved on a heavy-gravity world, making them physically powerful but not particularly fast. Council peacekeepers? He asked. No, sir. These ships do not match any known Council designs. Energy signatures are unusual. Haxron was not worried. In 50 years of conquest, no species had ever seriously challenged Krex forces. Most opponents surrendered as soon as they saw the size of the invasion fleet. Identify yourselves, he broadcast on standard frequencies. This system is under Krex protection. Leave immediately or face the consequences. The response came from the lead human ship. This is Admiral Hyun Woo of the Terran Defense Fleet. You will cease fire on the planet immediately and withdraw from this system. Haxron laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Terrans? I have never heard of your species. You have 20 ships. I have 43. Surrender now, and I will consider allowing you to leave. There was a pause. Then the human admiral spoke again. General, you have 10 seconds to begin withdrawal. After that, we will interpret your presence as hostile action against innocent civilians. Are you threatening me, alien? No, General. I am explaining the situation to you. Haxron looked at his tactical officer. How long until we can engage them? 2 minutes to bring all ships into optimal firing position. Do it. Destroy these. Terrans, make an example of them. On the Soul's Fury, Captain Jinsu watched the Krex ships beginning to maneuver toward his fleet. The enemy formation was exactly what he had expected. Slow, methodical, designed to intimidate rather than fight. All ships, weapons free, came Admiral Hyun Woo's voice. Jinsu, show them what happens when they threaten civilians. Jinsu smiled. Firing! The Soul's Fury fired first. Its main railgun launched a kinetic projectile at nearly the speed of light. The tungsten slug hit the nearest Krex destroyer before the enemy even knew they were under attack. The Krex ship simply disappeared. One moment it was there, the next it was expanding gas and debris. Lieutenant Eun-ji, commanding the fighter squadron, launched her birds immediately. 12 small, fast ships streaked toward the Krex formation. Their pilots were veterans of the asteroid belt wars, trained to fight in the chaos of three-dimensional space combat. "Remember," Yunji told her pilots, "these are bullies. They have never faced real opposition. Hit them hard and fast. Do not give them time to think." The human fighters moved like hunting wolves. They used the debris from the destroyed destroyer as cover, appearing and disappearing among the wreckage. Each fighter carried missiles designed to penetrate heavy armor. The Krex tried to respond, but their weapons were not built for small, fast targets. Their plasma cannons were designed to destroy large ships or bombard planets. The human fighters were too quick, too small, too unpredictable. In 30 seconds, Yunji's squadron destroyed 3 more Krex ships. General Haxron watched his tactical display in growing alarm. 4 ships lost, and the battle had barely begun. The Terran vessels moved with a coordination he had never seen before. Their weapons fired with precision that seemed impossible. "Return fire," he ordered. "All ships, concentrate on their flagship." The Krex fleet finally responded. 40 plasma cannons opened fire on the Indomitable. Bright beams of superheated gas struck the human ship's shields. Admiral Hyunwoo barely noticed. "Shields at 90%, reported his weapons officer. "Is that all?" Hyunwoo asked. "Bow-ram, target their flagship. Full torpedo spread." The Indomitable launched 12 missiles at once. The weapons were not the simple explosive devices most species used. These were sophisticated hunter-killers, equipped with their own guidance systems and electronic warfare packages. The Krex tried to shoot down the incoming missiles, but the human weapons adjusted their course constantly. They weaved between defensive fire, splitting apart into smaller warheads, rejoining when necessary. 6 torpedoes reached General Haxron's ship. The explosions tore through its armor like paper. The mighty Krex flagship, pride of their fleet, split in half and began to drift. "General Haxron is dead," reported Lieutenant Wu Jin. "The Krex are falling back to defensive positions." Captain Jin Su's voice came over the radio. "Admiral, should we pursue?" Hyunwoo considered. The Krex had lost 8 ships in less than 5 minutes. The survivors were retreating toward the far side of the planet, but they still had ground forces on the surface. "Negative. Let them run for now. Prepare for planetary assault." On the surface of Kepler 442b, Krex Ground Commander Colonel Vashta watched the orbital battle through his communication equipment. The reports made no sense. The mighty Krex fleet was being destroyed by a handful of alien ships. "Who are these? Terrans?" he demanded of his intelligence officer. "Unknown, sir. No records in our database. But their technology appears to be significantly advanced." Vashta was a veteran of 20 planetary conquests. He had seen many species try to resist Krex occupation. All had failed eventually. But he had never seen anything like this. His communication officer looked up from his console. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Terran fleet." "Put it through." The image of a human appeared on the screen. Admiral Hyunwoo looked calm and professional. "Like a businessman discussing a contract. Colonel Vashta, I am Admiral Hyunwoo. I am giving you one chance to surrender. Withdraw your forces from the planet immediately. Leave the Villani in peace." Vashta studied the alien face. Humans looked weak compared to Krex. Small, soft, fragile. But their ships had just destroyed half his fleet. "What guarantee do I have?" "That you will not attack if I withdraw." "You have my word as an officer. Surrender now and your people will be allowed to leave safely. Vashta considered his options. He still had 10,000 troops on the ground. The Volani had no military. Even if these Terrans had superior ships, they could not have many ground forces. I refuse, he said. This world belongs to the Kreks, Empire. If you want it, come and take it. Admiral Hyun-woo nodded as if he had expected this answer. Very well, Colonel. You had your chance. The transmission ended. In the underwater city of Thalovs, Elder Thalmora watched the orbital battle. Through emergency periscopes, the ancient Volani had lived through 3 centuries of peace. She had never seen violence on this scale, but she felt hope for the first time since the invasion began. These Terrans fought with a skill and ferocity that amazed her. They had come in response to her people's call for help. They were outnumbered, but they were winning. Are they really here to help us? Asked her aide, a younger Volani named Koltha. Thalmora watched another Krek ship explode in the distance. I believe they are, child, but I think their idea of help is very different from ours. Above them, the human fleet prepared for the next phase of the operation. The orbital space was almost clear of enemy ships. Now it was time to deal with the ground forces. Major Hye-jin checked her equipment one final time. In 20 minutes, she and her drop troops would launch toward the planet's surface. The Kreks thought they were safe on the ground. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Major Hye-jin stood in the drop bay of the Indomitable, checking her armor one final time. Around her, 200 soldiers of the 8th Orbital Drop Division made their own preparations. Each warrior was sealed inside a powered armor suit designed to survive atmospheric entry and provide protection in hostile environments. Listen up, Hye-jin called over the unit communication system. The Kreks have fortified positions around 3 major Volani settlements. Intelligence shows approximately 10,000 enemy troops scattered across the main continent. Sergeant Dong-hyun raised his armored hand. Ma'am, what about the Volani civilians? Most are safe in underwater cities, but some are trapped in surface installations that the Kreks have occupied. We go in fast and hard, neutralize enemy forces, secure the civilians, establish a perimeter. The soldiers nodded. They had done this before on other worlds. Drop from orbit, hit the ground running, complete the mission. The only difference was that this time they were fighting for aliens instead of human colonies. Drop in 60 seconds, announced the bay controller. Hye-jin climbed into her drop pod, a heavily armored capsule designed to carry one soldier safely through planetary atmosphere. The pod was cramped and uncomfortable, but it could deliver troops precisely where they were needed. All units, sound off, she ordered. One by one, her squad leaders reported ready. Dong-hyun commanded First Squad, responsible for securing the northern settlement. Staff Sergeant Yu-jin led Second Squad, tasked with underwater operations. Sergeant Kim led Third Squad, targeting the main Kreks command center. Drop bay opening, came the announcement. Below them, Kepler 442b spread out like a blue-green jewel. Most of the planet was covered by oceans, with scattered islands and 2 major continents. Smoke rose from several locations where Krek's bombardment had damaged surface installations. Go! 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 The drop pods launched in sequence, falling toward the planet like meteors. Each pod was equipped with heat shields and guidance systems, but the ride was still violent. Hye-jin felt her body pressed into the crash couch as atmospheric friction slowed her descent. On the planet's surface, Colonel Vashta watched the sky with growing alarm. Dozens of bright lights were falling toward his positions. His sensor officer confirmed what he feared. Sir, incoming projectiles, but they are too small to be orbital bombardment. Then what are they? Before anyone could answer, the first pods hit the ground. They struck the Earth with tremendous force, creating small craters around the Krek's positions. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the pods opened. Sergeant Dong Hyun emerged from his pod with his rifle already firing. The powered armor made. Him looked like a mechanical demon, 7 feet tall and armed with weapons the Kreks had never seen before. His squad followed him out, spreading into combat formation with practiced efficiency. The Krek soldiers nearby tried to respond, but they were caught completely off guard. Their plasma rifles were designed for fighting other Kreks or weak council species. The human armor absorbed the energy blasts easily. Dong Hyun's rifle fired solid projectiles at hypersonic speed. Each shot punched through Krek's armor like it was made of paper. In 30 seconds, his squad had cleared the landing zone and began advancing toward their objective. Major Hee-jin landed near the central Volani settlement, where the largest concentration of Krek's forces was located. Her pod smashed through the roof of a Krek's barracks, crushing 3 soldiers before she even stepped out. The Kreks inside the building panicked. They had never faced an enemy that literally fell from the sky into their midst. Hee-jin moved through the structure methodically, her suit's sensors identifying targets and tracking movement through walls. First building secured, she reported, moving to Phase 2. Staff Sergeant Yu Jin had the most unusual assignment. Her squad landed in the shallow waters near the coast, where several Volani facilities extended both above and below the waterline. The Kreks had occupied the surface portions, but could not reach the underwater sections. Yujin's armor was equipped for aquatic operations. She and her troops moved seamlessly from land to water, engaging Krek's forces on the surface before diving. Down to check on Volani civilians, the Krek soldiers watched in amazement as the humans disappeared beneath the waves. Kreks could not swim. Their heavy bodies and dense bone structure made them sink like stones in water. They had never understood how aquatic species could live in such an environment. "Sir," reported one of Vashita's officers, "the enemy soldiers are fighting underwater. Our troops cannot follow them." Vashita stared at the tactical display. The Terran landing force was smaller than he had expected, but they were moving with impossible speed and efficiency. Every position they attacked was taken within minutes. "How many of them are there?" "Sensors indicate approximately 200 individuals." 200? Against 10,000 of our troops? "Yes, sir. But their equipment appears to be far superior to ours." Sergeant Kim's squad hit the main Krek's command post like a hammer. The enemy had fortified the position with energy, barriers, and heavy weapons. Against most attackers, it would have been impregnable. But Kim's troops carried equipment designed for storming hardened positions. They used plasma cutters to burn through barriers, launched micro-missiles to eliminate gun positions, and coordinated their assault with precision that amazed even veteran Krek's officers. "Command post is under attack," screamed the Krek's communication officer. "They are inside the perimeter." Vashita grabbed his personal weapon and headed for the command bunker entrance. He was a Krek's colonel, a veteran of 20 campaigns. He would not hide while his soldiers fought. He reached the main corridor just as a human soldier rounded the corner. The Terran was smaller than a Krek's but moved with deadly grace. His armor was covered with sensors and weapons that Vashita did not recognize. Vashita fired his plasma rifle. The beam struck the human directly in the chest. The Terran staggered but did not fall. Instead, he raised his own weapon and returned. Fire! The kinetic round hit Vashita with the force of a small meteor. The Krek's colonel, veteran of 2 decades of warfare, died instantly. "Command post secured," reported Sergeant Kim. "Enemy commander is neutralized." Across the battlefield, The story was the same. Krek's positions that should have taken days to capture fell in minutes. The human soldiers moved like ghosts, appearing suddenly to strike and disappearing before the enemy could respond effectively. In the underwater city of Thalavas, Elder Thalmora received reports from her people on the surface. The Terrans were fighting with a skill and ferocity that defied belief. They seemed to fear nothing, adapt to any environment, overcome any obstacle. Elder, reported her aide Koltha, our people in the surface settlements say the Terrans are checking on civilians before engaging the enemy. They are asking if anyone needs medical attention. Thalmora was amazed. These warriors who fought like demons also showed concern for civilian welfare. She had never heard of such a combination. Are they winning? Yes, Elder. The Krek's forces are retreating from all positions. Some are trying to reach their ships. Others are surrendering. On the Soul's Fury, Captain Jin Su monitored the ground battle while keeping watch for any remaining Krek's vessels. His ship's sensors could track the human soldiers as they moved across the planet's surface. Admiral, he reported to Hyun-woo, Major Hyejin's forces have secured all primary objectives. Casualties, 0 KIA, 3 wounded. Enemy losses, approximately 60% of ground forces. Admiral Han-woo nodded. The numbers were exactly what he had expected. Human soldiers trained for combat on Earth were prepared for anything the galaxy could throw at them. Any word from the Vallani? Lieutenant Wu Jin checked his communications console. Sir, we are receiving multiple transmissions. The Vallani leadership wants to thank us personally. They are asking if they can send representatives to meet with you. Tell them I would be honored to speak with them. Arrange a meeting in neutral territory. As the sun set over Kepler 442b, the battle was essentially over. The Krek's invasion force had been destroyed or scattered. Those who survived were in full retreat, trying to reach their remaining ships and escape the system. Major Hyejin stood on a hill overlooking the main Vallani settlement. Smoke rose from several buildings, but the damage was less than she had feared. Her soldiers were already working with Vallani civilians to provide medical aid and emergency supplies. Ma'am, reported Sergeant Dong-hyun, we have secured all enemy equipment and taken about 300 prisoners. What are your orders? Hyejin considered. The mission parameters had been simple. Stop the Krek's aggression and protect the Vallani. Both objectives were complete. Turn the prisoners over to Vallani authorities. They can decide what to do with them. As for us, maintain security until Admiral Hyun-woo gives further orders. The Krek's empire had learned a hard lesson. When Deathworlders offered to help, they did not send aid workers and supply ships. They sent soldiers and warships, and they kept fighting until the job was done. Colonel Taeho and his rangers landed far from the main battle zones. While Major Hyejin's drop troops engaged the primary Krek's forces, the rangers had a different mission: hunt down enemy survivors and prevent them from regrouping. The Deathworld Rangers were Earth's elite special forces. They were trained to operate alone for weeks at a time, living off the land and striking at enemy supply lines. Each ranger carried enough equipment to survive in any environment and weapons designed for precision elimination of targets. Taeho himself had trained on 7 different worlds, from the ice caves of Europa to the acid rainforests of Kepler 186f. At 45 years old, he was still in perfect physical condition, with the patience of a hunter and the instincts of a predator. Rangers, sound off, he called over the unit communication system. 4 voices responded. Corporal Minho was the youngest member of the team, but he had already completed missions on 3 hostile worlds. Sergeant So Jin specialized in long-range elimination and surveillance. Private Wu Bin was their demolitions expert. Corporal Yura handled communications and electronic warfare. Intelligence reports Krek survivors scattered across the southern continent, Taeho explained. Estimated company strength, maybe 200 troops. They are trying to reach an extraction point near the equatorial islands. Minho checked his weapon, a sniper rifle capable of hitting targets at extreme range. Rules of engagement, sir. Standard anti-insurgency protocol. No prisoners unless they surrender unconditionally. Our job is to make sure none of them escape to report back to the Krek's empire. The Rangers spread out across the rugged terrain. Kepler 442b's southern continent was mostly wilderness, covered with thick forests and crossed by deep rivers. For most species, it would be impossible terrain to cross quickly, but the Rangers had trained in similar environments on Earth. They moved through the alien forest like ghosts, using natural cover and staying off the main paths. Their armor was equipped with camouflage systems that made them nearly invisible. Sergeant Sojin found the first group of Krek survivors 12 hours after landing. 20 soldiers moving along a river valley, heading toward the coast. They looked tired and demoralized. Nothing like the confident invaders who had attacked the Villani settlements. Target acquired, she reported quietly. 20 individuals, light weapons, moving in formation. Taeho's voice came back immediately. Eliminate them. Make it quick and quiet. So Jin settled into a firing position on a ridge overlooking the valley. Her rifle was equipped with a silencer and smart ammunition that could adjust its course after firing. She took careful aim at the Krek's leader. The first shot dropped the enemy commander instantly. Before the other Kreks could react, So Jin had fired 3 more times. The alien soldiers panicked, running in different directions, but they could not escape the Rangers' precision fire. In 90 seconds, it was over. 20 Krek soldiers lay dead in the valley. So Jin was already moving to her next position before their bodies stopped twitching. Corporal Min Ho encountered a larger group near an abandoned Villani research station. 50 Krek's troops had taken shelter in the facility, apparently planning to wait for rescue. They had set up defensive positions and were scanning the skies for friendly ships. Minho studied the situation carefully. A direct assault would be difficult, even for a ranger, but he had other options. He contacted Private Wu Bin, who was operating 2 kilometers away. I need a distraction at grid reference 77 Alpha, something loud. How loud? Wu Bin asked cheerfully. The young soldier enjoyed his work a little too much. Loud enough to wake the dead. Wu Bin's explosive charges detonated exactly on schedule. The blast echoed across the forest, and the Krek soldiers immediately looked in that direction. They sent 20 troops to investigate the explosion. While the enemy was distracted, Minho slipped into the research station through a maintenance tunnel. He moved through the building systematically, eliminating Krek soldiers one by one. His knife was sharp and his hands were quick. By the time the investigation team returned, their comrades were all dead. Minho was waiting for them in the main corridor. His rifle spoke 20 times in rapid succession. The Krek soldiers fell without even seeing their killer. Meanwhile, on the Krek's homeworld of Vraktar, the High Command was receiving disturbing reports from the Kepler 442 system. War Chief Gral Nox, Supreme Commander of Krek's military forces, studied the communications with growing alarm. You are telling me that General Haxaron's entire fleet has been destroyed? He asked his intelligence chief. Yes, War Chief. 43. Ships lost. General Haxaron killed in action. Ground forces scattered or eliminated. Gral Nox was a massive creature, even by Krek standards. His scarred hide showed the marks of 100 battles. He had never lost a campaign in 30 years of warfare. What do we know about these Terrans? Very little, sir. They appear to be a new species, not affiliated with the Galactic Council. Their technology is highly advanced, particularly their weapons and military tactics. Growlnox studied the tactical reports. The destruction of Haxron's fleet was bad enough, but the ground battle reports were even more disturbing. 200 enemy soldiers had defeated 10,000 Krex troops. Such a thing should have been impossible. Prepare the second assault fleet, he ordered. I will personally oversee the recapture of Kepler 442b. Sir, what strength do you recommend? Growlnox considered. Against any other enemy, he would send 100 ships and 20,000 troops. But these Terrans had proven unusually capable. 200 ships, 50,000 ground troops, elite units only. The intelligence chief looked surprised. War chief, that is a larger force than we used to conquer the Alterian system. The Alterians did not destroy an entire Krex fleet in 30 minutes. Back on Kepler 442b, Colonel Tae-ho was receiving reports from his rangers. The hunt for Krex survivors was going well. In 18 hours, they had eliminated over 100 enemy soldiers without taking a single casualty. But Corporal Yu-ra, monitoring enemy communications, had picked up something interesting. Sir, I am intercepting Krex military transmissions. They are calling for reinforcements. Something about a second assault fleet. Tae-ho frowned. How large? The signals are encrypted, but based on the volume of traffic, I estimate at least 100 ships, maybe more. This was potentially serious. The human fleet had fought brilliantly against 40 Krex vessels, but 100 would be a different challenge entirely. Contact Admiral Hyun-woo immediately. Pass along this intelligence. On the Indomitable, Admiral Hyun-woo received the Rangers' report while meeting with Vellani leaders. Elder Thalmora had come up from her underwater city to thank the humans, personally, for their intervention. Admiral, she said in her melodious voice, my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You came to help strangers, fighting a war that was not your own. Hyun-woo was touched by the elderly Vellani's sincerity. Elder Thalmora, we came because you asked for help. It is that simple. But you risked so much. Your ships, your soldiers, your lives. That is what soldiers are for, Hyun-woo replied. To protect those who cannot protect themselves. The meeting was interrupted by Commander Boram, who entered with an urgent message. Admiral, Colonel Tae-ho reports intercepted Krex communications. Enemy reinforcements are en route. Estimated arrival in 36 hours. Hyun-woo excused himself and studied the intelligence report. 100 ships or more meant the Krex were taking this defeat seriously. They were sending enough force to destroy any normal fleet. Do we have support from Earth Command? He asked. Negative, sir. The nearest human fleet is 6 days away. Hyun-woo made his decision quickly. Signal all ships. We hold position and prepare for battle. The Vellani are not finished yet, and neither are we. Elder Thalmora had overheard the conversation. Admiral, perhaps you should withdraw. My people are safe now. We can hide in our deep cities until this passes. Hyun-woo shook his head. Elder, if we leave now, the Krex will return in force. They will be angry and vengeful. Your people will suffer for our intervention. But you cannot fight 100 ships with 20. Admiral Hyun-woo smiled grimly. Elder, you do not know humans very well yet. When we are outnumbered, we do not retreat. We get creative. He turned to Boram. Contact Captain Jinsu and Major Hae-jin. We have work to do. The Kreks thought they were sending enough force to guarantee victory. They were about to learn that when fighting Deathworlders, there was no such thing as enough force. The real battle was just beginning. War Chief Gralnox arrived in the Kepler 442 system with the largest Kreks battle fleet ever assembled. 200 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons powered and shields raised. 50,000 elite troops waited in the assault ships, ready to avenge their fallen comrades. Gralnox stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty dreadnought Conqueror's Wrath. The massive vessel was 3 times the size of any ship in General Haxron's original fleet. Its armor could withstand planetary bombardment. Its weapons could crack a moon. "Status report," the war chief commanded. His tactical officer, a seasoned veteran named Commander Thexva, studied the sensor displays. 20 Terran vessels in orbit around the planet. They have not moved since our arrival. Only 20? Where are their reinforcements? Unknown, War Chief. Perhaps they believe 20 ships are sufficient. Gralnox laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Then they will learn the price of arrogance. Open a communication channel. On the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Hyunwoo received the incoming transmission. The image of the Kreks war chief appeared on his main screen. The alien was even larger than the previous Kreks commanders, covered in scars and wearing elaborate armor. "I am War Chief Gralnox of the Kreks Empire," the creature announced. "You are the ones who destroyed General Haxron's fleet. I am Admiral Hyunwoo. Yes, we stopped your invasion of this system. You killed my soldiers. You interfered with Kreks expansion. For this, you will pay with your lives." Hyunwoo remained calm. "War Chief, you attacked innocent civilians. We responded appropriately. Withdraw from this system and there will be no further conflict." Gralnox's eyes burned with hatred. "You face 200 ships, Terran. Surrender now and I will grant your people a quick death." "I appreciate the offer," Hyunwoo replied, "but I must decline." The transmission ended. Gralnox turned to his fleet commander. "Destroy them! Leave no survivors!" The Kreks fleet began to advance. 200 ships moving in disciplined formation, their plasma cannons charging for maximum effect. It was a sight that had terrified dozens of species across the galaxy. Admiral Hyunwoo watched them come without fear. "Bo-Ram, signal the fleet. Execute Plan Omega." Commander Bo-Ram hesitated. "Sir, are you certain? The Galactic Council will—" "The Council is not here, Commander. We are." Bo-Ram entered the authorization codes. Across the human fleet, weapon systems that had been dormant suddenly came online. These were not the conventional arms the humans had used in the first battle. These were weapons designed for a different kind of warfare. Captain Jin Su received his orders aboard the Soul's Fury. His ship, along with 4 others, broke formation and accelerated toward the planet's surface. "All hands," he announced over the ship's communication system, "prepare for orbital bombardment operations." Lieutenant Yunji looked up from her fighter control station. "Sir, the Kreks fleet will reach firing range in 10 minutes. Then we had—" "Better work quickly," Jinsu replied. On the planet's surface, Colonel Tae-ho was leading his rangers toward the main Kreks staging area. Intelligence indicated that several hundred enemy survivors had gathered at an abandoned mining facility, waiting for rescue from the incoming fleet. "Rangers, new orders from Fleet Command," Tae-ho announced. "We are painting targets for orbital strike. Full withdrawal to minimum safe distance." Corporal Minho looked confused. "Sir, orbital strike? Against a few hundred troops?" "Not against the troops, Corporal. Against the facility. Admiral Hyun Woo wants to send a message. The Rangers moved quickly to their observation positions. Each soldier carried a laser designator capable of guiding orbital weapons to precise targets. They had practiced this procedure dozens of times, but never in actual combat. "Targets painted," reported Sergeant So-jin. "All Rangers at safe distance." High above, Captain Jin-soo's ships positioned themselves in orbital bombardment formation. The Soul's Fury carried kinetic impactors designed to strike ground targets with the force of small nuclear weapons, but without the radiation. Firing. "Solution confirmed," reported his weapons officer, Commander Jae-won. "Targeting data received from ground teams." Jin-soo gave the order. "Fire!" The kinetic impactors launched from orbit like thunder. Each projectile was a solid tungsten rod, 3 meters long and guided by sophisticated targeting systems. They fell toward the planet at tremendous speed, building kinetic energy as they descended. The first impactor hit the mining facility exactly where Sergeant So-jin had painted the target. The explosion was visible from orbit, a flash of light that briefly outshone the sun. The facility simply vanished, along with everything within a kilometer radius. War Chief Gralnox watched the strike from his flagship. The energy release was enormous, far larger than any conventional weapon should produce. "What kind of weapon was that?" he demanded. Commander Thexva checked his sensor readings. "Unknown, War Chief. The energy signature suggests a kinetic impactor, but the destructive force is beyond anything in our database." "How many troops were in that facility?" "Approximately 800 survivors from the first battle." Gralnox's face darkened. The Terrans had just obliterated 800 soldiers to make a point. This was not the behavior of a civilized species, but it was effective. Across the planet, other groups of Krek survivors began surrendering to human forces rather than risk orbital bombardment. In space, the main battle was about to begin. The Krek's fleet had reached optimal firing range and opened with a massive volley. 200 plasma cannons fired simultaneously, targeting the human ships with overwhelming force. The beams struck the human vessels, but something was wrong. The energy dissipated harmlessly against their shields. The Terran ships seemed to absorb the plasma fire without damage. "Impossible," breathed Commander Thexva. "Nothing can withstand that much concentrated fire." Admiral Hyunwoo smiled grimly. "Boram, explain to our guests how adaptive shielding works." The Indomitable's main weapons came online, but instead of conventional railguns or missiles, the ship fired something the Kreks had never seen before. Beams of coherent energy that sliced through space like swords of light. The nearest Krek's cruiser was cut in half so cleanly that both sections continued traveling in formation for several seconds before exploding. Captain Jin-soo's voice came over the fleet communication channel. "Admiral, planetary bombardment complete. All ground targets neutralized." "Excellent work, Captain. Return to fleet formation and prepare for Phase 2. War Chief Gralnox realized that he had made a terrible mistake. These Terrans were not using standard Galactic Council technology. Their weapons, their shields, their tactics were all completely unknown. "All ships," he ordered, "concentrate fire on their flagship. Maximum power." The Krek's fleet focused their attack on the Indomitable. Hundreds of plasma beams struck the human ship simultaneously. The energy release was sufficient to destroy a small moon. Admiral Hyun-woo felt his ship shudder under the impact, but the shields held. "Damage report." "Shields at 70%, reported his engineering officer. "All systems nominal. Return fire. Full spread." The Indomitable launched a barrage of missiles, each one equipped with adaptive guidance and penetration aids. The Krex tried to intercept them, but the human weapons were too sophisticated. They weaved through defensive fire, split into multiple warheads, and struck with pinpoint accuracy. 6 Krex ships died in the first exchange. In the underwater city of Thalves, Elder Thalmora watched the orbital battle through emergency telescopes. The violence was beyond anything in Villani experience, but she could see that the humans were winning despite being outnumbered 10-1. "How are they doing this?" asked her aide Koltha. "I do not know," Thalmora replied. "But I am beginning to understand why the Krex Empire fears them." The battle raged for 6 hours. The Krex threw everything they had at the human fleet, but the Terrans seemed to absorb punishment that would have destroyed any other force. Their ships moved with impossible coordination, their weapons fired with devastating accuracy, their shields adapted to every attack. By the time the sun set over Kepler 442b, 40 Krex ships had been destroyed. The human fleet had taken damage, but not a single vessel had been lost. War Chief Gralnox stared at his tactical display in disbelief. He had brought the largest Krex fleet in history to crush 20 human ships. Instead, he was losing the battle. "War Chief," reported Commander Thexva, "the fleet is requesting permission to withdraw." Gralnox considered his options. He could continue fighting and probably lose his entire force. Or he could retreat and face the shame of defeat. Before he could decide, Admiral Hyun-woo's voice filled the bridge. "War Chief Gralnox, I am offering you one chance to surrender. Withdraw from this system immediately, and I will allow your remaining ships to depart safely." Gralnox looked around his bridge. His officers were exhausted and demoralized. Many of them were openly afraid of the human weapons. "And if I refuse," he asked, "then we will demonstrate what happens when Deathworlders stop holding back." Bonet, War Chief, realized that the humans had been restraining themselves during the battle. The thought terrified him more than anything else that had happened that day. War Chief Gralnox transmitted his surrender across all Krex military frequencies. The message went out to every ship in the fleet, every garrison in the Empire, every outpost on conquered worlds. For the first time in Krex history, their supreme military commander was admitting defeat. "This is War Chief Gralnox to all Krex forces. The second assault fleet is withdrawing from the Kepler 442 system. The Terran species has proven more capable than anticipated. All units are ordered to avoid contact with human forces until further notice." The implications of this message rippled through Krex space. Their mighty empire, which had conquered 12 star systems through overwhelming force, had been stopped by a single human fleet. The news would spread to every species in the galaxy within hours. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Hyun-woo watched the Krex ships preparing to jump to hyperspace. Commander Boram stood beside him, still amazed by what they had accomplished. "Sir, should we pursue them?" she asked. Hyun-woo shook his head. "Our mission was to protect the Villani. That mission is complete. Let the Krex return home and think about what happened here." Major Seok Jin, the senior Marine officer, approached the Admiral. "Sir, we have reports from the planet's surface. All remaining Krex forces have surrendered unconditionally. Colonel Taeho is accepting the surrender of the last holdout group. Now." Down on the planet, Colonel Taeho stood in the ruins of what had been a Krex forward operating base. The orbital bombardment had been precise but devastating. Nothing remained of the military installations except twisted metal and fused rock. 30 Krex soldiers knelt in formation before him, their weapons thrown aside. These were the last survivors of the 10,000 troops that had invaded the planet. Their commander, a junior officer named Lieutenant Krasavol, stepped forward to formally surrender. We yield to the Terran forces, the young Krex said. His voice shook with fear and exhaustion. Teho studied the alien soldiers. They looked beaten, demoralized. Nothing like the confident invaders who had attacked the Volani settlements. The demonstration of human orbital bombardment capabilities had broken their will to fight completely. "Lieutenant," Teho said in a calm voice, "your troops will be turned over to Volani authorities. They will decide your fate." Krasvol nodded, quickly. Anything was better than facing more human weapons. Corporal Min Ho approached his colonel. "Sir, what about the equipment they left behind?" Teho looked around the battlefield. Krex weapons, vehicles, and communication gear were scattered everywhere. Most of it was damaged, but still potentially valuable for intelligence purposes. Secure everything. Fleet intelligence will want to study their technology. The Rangers moved efficiently to collect the enemy equipment. They had done this before on other worlds, turning defeated enemies' own weapons against them. It was standard procedure for Earth's special forces. Meanwhile, in the underwater city of Thalves, Elder Thalmora was preparing to meet with the human leadership. The ancient Volani had never imagined she would witness such events. Her peaceful people had been saved by warriors from a distant world, fighters whose methods were as alien to her as their appearance. "Elder," her aide Koltha said nervously, "are you certain it is safe to meet with them? They are very violent." Thalmora considered this. The humans had indeed shown a capacity for destruction that terrified even the warlike Krex, but they had also shown restraint, precision, and genuine concern for civilian casualties. "Child, they came across the galaxy to help strangers. They fought a war that was not theirs to fight. The least we can do is thank them properly." The meeting took place on neutral ground, a small island that had been designated as a diplomatic zone. Admiral Hyun Woo arrived with a small escort, including Major Hae Jin and Captain Jin Soo. The Volani delegation emerged from the shallow waters, moving gracefully despite their aquatic nature. Elder Thalmora was smaller than the humans had expected, barely reaching Admiral Hyun Woo's chest. Her skin was a pale blue-green color, and her large eyes held the wisdom of 3 centuries. When she spoke, her voice was like music. "Admiral Hyun Woo, I am Thalmora, speaker for the Volani people. We are in your debt." The Admiral bowed respectfully. "Elder Thalmora, we were honored to help. Your message reached us at the right time. You risked everything for people you had never met. Why?" Hyunwoo considered how to explain human motivations to this gentle being. "Elder, on our world, we learned long ago that evil succeeds when good people do nothing. The Krex were committing evil acts. We could not stand by and watch." Thalmora was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been troubling her since the battle began. "Admiral, your people fight with such efficiency, such precision in destruction. Are all humans like this?" Captain Jin-Soo and Major Hae-Jin exchanged glances. How could they explain to a peaceful species that humans were actually considered quite restrained by their own standards? "Elder," Hyunwoo said carefully, "my soldiers are professionals. They are trained to complete missions with minimum casualties and maximum effect. What you witnessed was a humanitarian operation conducted with military precision." "Humanitarian?" Thalmora was confused. "But you destroyed entire facilities. You eliminated thousands of enemy soldiers. Yes, Hyun-woo agreed. We eliminated the threat to your people as quickly and efficiently as possible. In human terms, this was a very limited engagement. Major Hye-jin nodded. Elder, if we had wanted to cause real destruction, this planet would be uninhabitable by now. We used minimum necessary force. The concept was difficult for Thalmora to grasp. To the Vellani, any violence was extreme. The idea that the devastating display they had witnessed was actually restrained warfare was almost incomprehensible. What will happen now? She asked. The Kreks will not return, Admiral Hyun-woo assured her. Word of this defeat will spread throughout their empire. They will think very carefully before attacking any world under human protection. Under human protection? Hyun-woo realized he had said more than he intended. Elder, if you wish, Earth would be willing to establish a mutual defense agreement with your people. We could provide security in exchange for trade and diplomatic relations. Thalmora was overwhelmed. Her people had gone from facing extinction to being offered protection by the most powerful military force they had ever seen. I must consult with the other elders. This is a decision that will affect generations of Vellani. Of course, take all the time you need. As the meeting concluded, Captain Jinsu received an urgent communication from his ship. Admiral, we are receiving multiple transmissions from across the galaxy. It appears news of the battle has spread. Admiral Hyun-woo returned to his flagship to find the communication board filled with incoming messages, reports from the Galactic Council, news broadcasts from major trade routes, and most interesting of all, distress calls from other species. Commander. Boram briefed him on the situation. Sir, we have received formal requests for assistance from 6 different star systems. All of them are reporting attacks by various aggressive species. Aggressive species that suddenly think twice before attacking? Hyun-woo asked. No, sir. Species that are attacking now, before we can intervene. It seems our reputation is spreading faster than our ability to respond. Lieutenant Wu Jin looked up from his intelligence console. Admiral, I am also receiving reports from inside Krek space. Several subject worlds are declaring independence. They seem to think the Krek's empire is weakening. Hyun-woo realized that their intervention at Kepler 442b had started something much larger than a single rescue mission. The galaxy's power structure was beginning to shift. Contact Earth Command, he ordered. Inform them that our definition of humanitarian aid may need some clarification. Medic Ha-yun was working in the temporary field hospital that had been set up near the main Vellani settlement. She moved between patients with calm efficiency, treating both human soldiers and Vellani civilians with equal care. A young Vellani named Silka watched her work with fascination. The human medic had hands that could assemble explosive devices or perform delicate surgery with equal skill. How do you do both? Silka asked. How can you heal and hurt with the same hands? Ha-yun paused in her work. It was a question that many humans had asked themselves over the centuries. Because sometimes, she said gently, the only way to protect the innocent is to stop those who would harm them. We heal because we choose to. We fight because we have to. The concept was beginning to make sense to the young Vellani. These humans were not monsters. They were guardians, protectors who used their capacity for violence only when necessary. As the human fleet prepared to depart Kepler 442b, the impact of their intervention was still growing. The Krek's empire was in chaos. Subject worlds were Revolting and aggressive species throughout the galaxy were reassessing their expansion plans. The Villani had asked for aid. They had received something far more valuable, proof that there were beings in the universe willing to fight for justice, even when it was not their own fight. Admiral Hyun Woo stood on his bridge, looking down at the blue-green world they had saved. In human terms, it had been a routine peacekeeping operation. In galactic terms, it had changed everything. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans offered help, they meant it. And they were very, very good at it. The Galactic Council chambers had never seen such chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. The emergency session had been called to address the Terran incident at Kepler 442b, but no one could agree on what had actually happened. Chancellor Vextar, the tall, blue-skinned Altarian who led the council, called for order with increasing desperation. His elegant features showed the strain of trying to manage a crisis he did not understand. "Honored delegates," he called out, "please return to your seats. We must discuss this situation calmly." Councillor Thexa, the crystalline representative of the silicon-based species, rose to speak. Her voice chimed like breaking glass. "Chancellor, the humans were asked to provide humanitarian aid. Instead, they deployed a military fleet and destroyed a major Krex force. This is completely outside Council protocols." "The Villani asked for help," countered Councillor Morvek, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "The humans provided help. The fact that their help was more effective than expected is not a violation of Council law." Ambassador Lee sat quietly in the human delegation area, watching the alien politicians argue. He had been briefed on the mission parameters, but even he was surprised by how quickly and thoroughly Admiral Hyun Woo had resolved the crisis. "Ambassador Lee," Chancellor Vextar called, "perhaps you could explain your people's actions?" Lee stood carefully. He was a diplomat, trained to choose his words precisely. "Chancellor, Earth responded to a humanitarian crisis exactly as requested. The Villani asked for aid. We provided aid." "You call orbital bombardment humanitarian aid?" demanded Councillor Thexa. "We call the elimination of hostile forces threatening civilians humanitarian aid," Lee replied calmly. "The method is less important than the result." The chamber erupted in angry voices again. Some delegates praised human efficiency. Others condemned human violence. None of them seemed to understand what they were really dealing with. "Chancellor," Vextar finally restored order by threatening to eject disruptive delegates. "The question before us," he announced, "is whether humanity's actions constitute a violation of Galactic Council principles." But before the debate could continue, a new communication arrived. The message was from the Krex Empire itself, transmitted on official diplomatic frequencies. War Chief Gralnox appeared on the main screen, his scarred features showing exhaustion and defeat. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its usual arrogance. "Honorable Council," he began, "the Krex Empire formally acknowledges the sovereignty of the Villani people over the Kepler 442 system. We withdraw all territorial claims and apologize for our intrusion." The chamber fell silent. In 300 years of Council history, the Krex had never apologized for anything. They had conquered 12 star systems through force and intimidation. The idea of them withdrawing from anywhere was unthinkable. Gralnox continued, his words carefully chosen. "Furthermore, the Krex Empire recognizes that the Terran response was proportionate to the threat we posed. We have no complaints about their methods or their results." The transmission ended, leaving the council delegates in stunned silence. If the Kreks themselves were not protesting human actions, what grounds did the council have for complaint? Chancellor Vextar struggled to maintain his composure. This is unprecedented. The Kreks are accepting responsibility for their aggression and acknowledging the legitimacy of the human response. Ambassador Lee nodded politely. As I said, Chancellor, we provided humanitarian aid. The aggressors have been stopped, the civilians are safe, and peace has been restored. Mission accomplished. But even as the Council tried to process these events, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The news of humanity's intervention had spread with incredible speed, and the consequences were far-reaching. On Earth, Admiral Hyan Wu's fleet had returned to a hero's welcome. The successful rescue of the Vellani had captured the public imagination. But in the halls of Earth Command, military leaders were dealing with more practical concerns. General Park met with Admiral Hyun Woo in the secure briefing room deep beneath Geneva. The older man looked tired but pleased. Congratulations, Admiral. The mission was a complete success. 0 human casualties, total elimination of the threat, and a new ally in the Vellani. Thank you, sir. But I suspect this is just the beginning. General Park nodded grimly. You are correct. We have received formal requests for assistance from 18 different star systems. All of them are facing aggression from various hostile species. 18 requests in 2 weeks? The galaxy has learned that when humans offer to help, we actually help. Word is spreading that there is finally a species willing to stand up to bullies and aggressors. Hyun Woo studied the list of requests. Some came from species he had never heard of. Others were from civilizations that had been under attack for years without hope of rescue. What are our orders, General? Earth Command is still deciding. But the politicians are nervous. They think we might be getting involved in conflicts that are not our concern. Sir, with respect, when innocent people ask for help, it becomes our concern. General Park smiled. That is exactly what I told the politicians, but they worry about overextending our forces. Meanwhile, in the Kreks Empire, the aftermath of the defeat was causing massive upheaval. On the conquered world of Theta 7, the local population had declared independence after learning that the mighty Kreks fleet had been destroyed by 20 human ships. The rebellion was led by a young Altarian named Zektol, who had spent 5 years in Kreks labor camps. When news of the defeat reached his people, they rose up with improvised weapons and sheer determination. The Kreks are not invincible, he shouted to the crowd of rebels. The Terrans proved that bullies can be beaten. Similar uprisings were occurring on 6 other Kreks-occupied worlds. The empire that had seemed unstoppable was suddenly fighting for its survival. On the world of Kepler 442b, life was slowly returning to normal. The Vellani had emerged from their underwater cities and were rebuilding the surface installations damaged in the fighting. But they were not the same people who had sent that desperate distress call. Elder Thalmora stood in the rebuilt council chamber, addressing her people about the future. The ancient Vellani had aged visibly during the crisis, but her voice was strong. My people, we have learned that the galaxy is a dangerous place. But we have also learned that there are those who will stand with us against that danger. The younger Vellani, especially those who had witnessed the human soldiers in action, were asking different questions now. They wanted to know about defensive technologies, military training, and what it meant to be strong enough to protect yourself. Koltha, Thalmora's aide, had been particularly affected by the experience. Elder, should we not learn to defend ourselves? The humans will not always be here to protect us. Perhaps you are right, child. Perhaps it is time for the Vellani to consider new ways of thinking. Back on Earth, Sergeant Ji-hoon was completing his after-action report with Admiral Hyun-woo. The young soldier had been part of Major Hae-jin's drop troops and had seen the entire operation from the ground level. "Sir, the mission statistics are remarkable," he reported. 0 human killed in action. 3 wounded, all returned to duty. Enemy casualties, approximately 11,800. Civilian casualties, 0. Admiral Hyun-woo reviewed the numbers with professional satisfaction. By human military standards, it had been a textbook operation. Precise, efficient, and effective. What about collateral damage? Minimal, sir. Orbital bombardment was limited. To military targets only. Vellani infrastructure damage was mostly from the original Krex attack, not our operations. And the prisoner situation? All surviving Krex personnel were turned over to Vellani authorities as requested. Most have been released and repatriated to Krex space. The Vellani chose rehabilitation over punishment. This did not surprise Hyun-woo. The gentle Vellani were too peaceful to seek revenge, even against those who had attacked them. It was probably for the best, but the real changes were happening elsewhere in the galaxy. The demonstration of human military capability had sent shockwaves through every major power. Species that had relied on aggression and intimidation were suddenly reconsidering their strategies. The hegemony of Corvex, a militaristic empire that controlled 8 star systems, had quietly withdrawn from several border disputes rather than risk human intervention. The syndicate of free traders had hired human security consultants to protect their shipping routes. Even the mysterious Void Dwellers had sent diplomatic inquiries about establishing formal relations with Earth. Captain Woo Jin, now serving as a liaison officer at Earth Command, was struggling to keep up with all the diplomatic communications. "Sir," he reported to General Park, "we have received formal alliance proposals from 23 different species, trade agreements from 47 civilizations, and mutual defense pacts from 16 governments. How many of these are legitimate?" "Most of them, sir. Everyone wants to be friends with the people who can destroy Krex fleets." General Park rubbed his temples. Earth had gone from being a barely tolerated newcomer to the most sought-after ally in the galaxy, all.